Hey, Disney fans, planners, and reluctant visitors. I'm Becky, and this is Touring Plans Teaches. Today we have Genie 202, Time Savings at Disneyland. We're going to be going over a lot of numbers and tables and charts to show you just how much time you could save with Genie or individual lightning lanes at Disneyland. And we'll also look at the availability of those reservations and how it changes throughout the day. Disclaimer to all of this. Our sample sizes for our data at Disneyland are much lower than they are at Disney World. So as we go through charts, if we have fancy things like confidence intervals, those are going to be a lot bigger at Disneyland. And some of those return times might shift around a little bit more than what you would see at Disney World, where we have a lot more data, so we're a lot more certain in what we're seeing. There's going to be a lot of different things that we're talking about today, so if you want to skip around to certain sections, there will be chapters called out in the notes below, so you can go ahead and take a look at those. Let's jump in and look at how much time you can save with Genie Plus at each attraction where it's offered. Now in this chart, you'll see some bars that go side to side. These are our confidence intervals. So we don't know exactly where these averages are going to land. Really, in reality, they could go anywhere from the left of that bar all the way to the right. But we have them in the middle in the average to make it easier on you. Also in this chart, we've got big blue dots and small gray ones. Big blue dots are attractions at Disneyland, and small gray ones are the attractions at Disney's California Adventure. When we compare these time savings to those at Disney World, we see that the attractions with the highest time savings don't even save you 40 minutes. Those are Guardians of the Galaxy, Mission Breakout, and Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run. Over at Disney World, we've got several Genie Plus attractions that can save you almost an hour on their own. So our top end isn't saving us quite as much time as it would at Disney World. But when we go all the way to the bottom of the chart and look at those attractions that don't save us as much time, there aren't as many. So only Star Tours is going to save us less than 10 minutes on average compared to the standby line. This is good news. There aren't a lot of throwaway Genie Plus options that are just in there to build in more availability and more reservations because of more demand. Typically, if Genie Plus is offered at an attraction at Disneyland or California Adventure, you can save a significant amount of time by using it compared to standby. So that's good news. Beyond Guardians of the Galaxy and Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run, there are 3 more attractions that will typically save you more than 30 minutes compared to standby. Those are Space Mountain, Toy Story Midway Mania, and Roger Rabbit. So if you can use it for any of those 3 attractions, you're also going to be saving more than half an hour with just one reservation, which is really good news. When we look at this as a whole, we can say how much time you're going to save at an attraction on average, regardless of which attraction it is. If we do that calculation for California Adventure, it comes out to over 30 minutes per attraction. So you can save 30.1 minutes per attraction at California Adventure. That's because there's only a few rides that offer Genie Plus at that park, and they all can save you quite a bit of time. At Disneyland, that number goes down to 21.2 minutes per attraction. So that might seem like a really big difference, and it is, but if we compare that to the parks at Disney World, where at Hollywood Studios you'll save 30.8 minutes per attraction, but every other park is something like 20.8, Epcot is as low as 12.1 minutes per attraction. Disneyland and California Adventure, when you combine them together, are better than Magic Kingdom, Animal Kingdom, and Epcot, and the only park that beats them is Hollywood Studios. Now let's shift the conversation toward availability of these reservations. We know at Disney World, the parks where we can save the most time are also the parks where those reservations sell out the quickest, which can lead to a bunch of frustration. So let's see if the same thing happens at Disneyland. Now in these charts that we're seeing, we've got a color code and some times showing up here. So the colors are going to tell you what percentage of the time reservations are available for that attraction at that time. If you see a box that's green, it means you can always get a Genie Plus reservation at that time. If it's red, that means it's never available at that time. And then you've got sort of that color scale in between. Yellow means there's a 50-50 shot that you'll be able to get a reservation. Our Disney World charts are really a sea of red, especially as you get into the high-level crowd days. But at Disneyland, we see a lot different colors, mostly green, and this is good news. So let's look at low crowds at Disneyland. Here we see that pretty much everything has immediate availability all day long. That's really good news. You can book any attraction and hop in the Lightning Lane almost as soon as you book it. This is the ideal scenario for any Genie Plus user. You'll probably be saving less time compared to standby because the standby waits are lower too on low crowd days. But it means you don't really have to plan ahead and have a strategy about what sells out when, so this makes us very happy as Genie Plus users. What does it look like as we go up to medium crowd days? On medium crowd days, 2 attractions start booking about an hour to an hour and a half in advance throughout the day. Those are Indiana Jones and Space Mountain. That means they'll typically sell out a little bit before the day ends, but not until the evening. And the rest of the attractions still maintain immediate availability for most of the day. So again, not a lot of advanced planning or strategy is required. This is awesome news. What about on high crowd level days? We saw this at Magic Kingdom, and Magic Kingdom availability really breaks down on high crowd level days. So does the same thing happen at Disneyland? No, not really. A few things do eventually sell out around 7 p.m. So even if you're booking throughout the day, maybe you don't get there until the afternoon, you're still going to have a lot of time to book these attractions, and you don't have to worry about them selling out before you have the opportunity to book them. A lot of attractions are booking out about an hour in advance now, and the headliners are booking 2 to 3 hours in advance. So you might, at this point, run into the 120-minute rule for the first time at Disneyland. But again, you could still easily book every Genie Plus attraction at Disneyland, even on a high crowd level day. Now let's talk about California Adventure. Remember, as far as number of attractions that offer Genie Plus and the amount of time you can save at each one, this park looks a lot like Hollywood Studios. And Hollywood Studios really struggles with Genie Plus availability. You have to go in with a really tight strategy to make good use of it on high crowd level days. Thankfully, California Adventure seems to avoid most of those issues. So let's look at low crowd level days. Again, we're seeing a lot of green here. That means you're not going to have to worry too much about missing the opportunity to book an attraction. Really, Soarin' is the only attraction that even books in advance. Everything else has immediate availability through most of the day. And when we flip to medium crowd levels, things continue to look pretty rosy. So Soarin's booking, again, a little in advance, and all other attractions might be booking an hour ahead, but not more than that. So you're not going to have the 120-minute rule. You're going to be able to get and use reservations pretty quickly, and you're going to be saving a lot of time at each one of them. And then finally, at those high crowd level days, these are the types of the days when at Hollywood Studios, if you don't book Slinky Dog Dash by 7 a.m., you can't even book it. Compare that to California Adventure, where the top 3 options don't sell out until 6 p.m. Sure, that's before the park closes, but you still have most of the day to be able to book them. Other attractions might be booking an hour and a half to 2 hours in advance, so again, you might run into the 120-minute rule here, but really, the picture is pretty clear that availability isn't as much of a problem at Disneyland or California Adventure as it is at the Walt Disney World parks. What can your overall time savings with Genie Plus look like at Disneyland and California Adventure? We can get a good idea by combining the 2 data sets that we already talked about, your time savings at each individual attraction and what we know about availability of those reservations. We can sort of play out what a typical day would look like. We also can sort of stratify our information into different crowd levels based on what we know about availability and time savings at each of those crowd levels. When we combine all of that, we get a pretty clear idea of how much time you'll be able to save at each park. At California Adventure, on low crowd days, you can use every single Genie Plus reservation available to you, but those standby lines aren't going to be as long. That means about 100 minutes of time savings throughout the course of the day if you're only using it at California Adventure. This really isn't that bad, but you are paying $20 to save a little over an hour and a half in line. When you go up to a medium crowd level day, we still don't see availability issues, so you can still use every reservation, and those standby lines are going to be longer. So that means now you can save 150 minutes in line. Now you're saving 2.5 hours compared to standby. That sounds a lot better. And as we go up to high crowd levels, again, you're probably going to be able to use every reservation. Standby lines are a lot longer, so you add all of that up and you can save over 180 minutes compared to your standby lines. $20 for over 3 hours of time savings throughout the course of the day, without the frustration of having to go in with a really solid strategy about what to book when, is a pretty big win. The time savings are actually even better at Disneyland. So when we look at low crowd level days at Disneyland, there's a lot more attractions to choose from. You can still use all of them in one day. And so even at a low crowd level, you can save over 150 minutes at Disneyland. So about the same as you would save at medium crowd levels at California Adventure. Go up to a medium crowd level day, you're still using every single reservation available to you pretty easily. And you add all of that up, and it means more than 4 hours of time savings compared to those standby lines. This is a huge win. I would pay $20 to save myself 4 hours of time any day of the week. But things get even better at high crowd levels. So on a high crowd level day, you might not use every single reservation available to you, but you could still easily use 10, 11. And when you do that and you add up all of the time savings compared to standby, you can save 275 minutes compared to standby. This is much bigger than anything we're seeing over at Walt Disney World, so it's pretty easy to say that your time savings are higher over on the West Coast, and it's easier to get those savings because you're not having to go through the strategy of what sells out when. We just saw that time savings is a lot better at Disneyland than it is at Walt Disney World, and availability is a lot better too, so you're not going to get as frustrated or have to go in with a really complex plan of attack for your day. What other things are different between the West Coast and East Coast based on these numbers that we're seeing? First, stacking is not as big of a deal at Disneyland. You could still do it, technically, if that's how you want to organize your day. But because so many attractions have immediate availability, it's harder to pick the ones that are booking further out in advance, so you might as well use them as you can. And at Disneyland, it's actually feasible to use every Genie Plus reservation at both parks in a single day. You'll probably have to attempt this on a low crowd day, but because park hopping is so easy, and there are fewer attractions that offer Genie Plus at each park, you could hop between Disneyland and California Adventure and knock out both parks in a single day using lightning lanes for every available attraction. Finally, if we look at California Adventure specifically, its time savings are very comparable to Hollywood Studios on an attraction-by-attraction basis, and there aren't many attractions. But its availability looks like Magic Kingdom, where you have a lot of availability throughout the day. So it's a best of the both worlds scenario. If you want to pick any park in the US to attempt Genie Plus for the first time, California Adventure is probably your best choice. We know that Genie Plus time savings are better at Disneyland than at Disney World in general, but we also know that Genie Plus costs more at Disneyland than it does at Disney World. So in order to do a fair comparison, we need to know the cost per hour of time that we save so that we can see where Genie Plus is a better value overall. If we do that, we see at the parks on the West Coast, at Disneyland, you're going to be paying somewhere between $4 and $8 per hour of time that you save compared to standby lines. And at California Adventure, you're going to be paying between $6 and $12 an hour to avoid those standby lines. That actually sounds pretty good to me, but let's put it in context of what you're paying over at Walt Disney World. At Disney World, the park with the best value for Genie Plus is Magic Kingdom, where you're paying a little less than $4 to just over $5.50 per hour of time saved. And at Epcot, that's where Genie Plus is the poorest value, and there you're paying between $7 and over $17 per hour of time saved compared to standby. So once we layer in the cost of Genie Plus, the West Coast parks look not quite as good of a value as Magic Kingdom, but compared to the other parks, still a good value, and again, a lot less frustrating. Now let's talk about what time you can save with individual lightning lanes. We can't talk about cost comparisons here because the cost of individual lightning lanes at Disneyland and California Adventure fluctuates pretty wildly from day to day with no discernible pattern. So we're not going to talk about value of these individual lightning lanes. We can figure out how much time they will save you though. So at Disneyland, the only individual lightning lane attraction is Rise of the Resistance. And there, using that individual lightning lane, you can save about 53 minutes on average compared to standby. This is actually a lot less than what you would save at Walt Disney World, where it was well over an hour on average. Still, 53 minutes is pretty good time savings, especially as you try to hit more of the park in the day. At California Adventure, there are 2 individual lightning lane attractions. Radiator Springs Racers offers individual lightning lane, and there you can save about 48 minutes compared to standby. Actually, almost comparable to what you save at Rise of the Resistance, and often quite a bit cheaper. Web Slingers is the other individual lightning lane attraction, and there you're going to save 40-ish minutes compared to standby. I'm emphasizing the ish here because while every attraction has smaller sample sizes at Disneyland than it does at Disney World, Web Slingers time savings have been all over the board. So when we average them out, they come to 40, but it could be a lot less and it could be a lot more. The other piece of this picture is availability of these individual lightning lane reservations. Let's compare Rise of the Resistance on both coasts again. Rise of the Resistance at Disney World typically sells out before the park opens at every crowd level. And on medium and high crowd level days, it's selling out almost immediately when it opens at 7 a.m. If we look at Rise of the Resistance on the West Coast instead, you have a much better chance of being able to book it throughout the day. Even on low crowd days, it's not going to sell out until maybe an hour or 2 before the park closes. So if you're a local and you're just visiting for the afternoon and evening, you still might have a chance to buy your way around the line if that's what you choose to do. On medium crowd level days, it does sell out a bit earlier, but not until 3 or 4 p.m. You've got all morning and some of the afternoon to be able to choose to purchase it. And on high crowd level days, it does sell out the earliest. This makes a lot of sense. Even still, it typically sells out around 11 a.m., so when you get into the park and you can finally purchase it, you'll have an opportunity to do so. The individual lightning lanes at California Adventure have even better availability. On low crowd level days, both of them have almost immediate availability throughout most of the day. At medium crowd levels, Radiator Springs Racers starts booking out maybe an hour, maybe 2 in advance, and so it sells out a little before the park closes. But Web Slingers maintains its immediate availability all throughout the day, even still on medium crowd level days. And if you look at high crowd level days, Radiator Springs Racers starts booking maybe 2 hours in advance, but you have availability throughout most of the day, and Web Slingers books out about an hour in advance all day. So you're not having to plan far, far ahead or try to book it right when you get in the park, otherwise it might sell out. Nothing that stressful happening with these attractions. A lot of that is because locals don't feel the need to purchase their way around it, and both of these attractions in California Adventure offer single rider lines where you don't have to pay, but you can still save a lot of time compared to standby. All of the math shows that Genie Plus and individual lightning lanes are much easier to use at Disneyland, and they still save you a lot of time. So if you're someone that tends to vacation at Disney on both coasts, and the idea and concept of Genie is intimidating to you, try it out at Disneyland first before deciding if you want to use it at Walt Disney World. This is the last episode of Touring Plans Teaches related to Genie, but don't worry, we're not going anywhere. We're going to continue coming up with more content to help you to be able to understand how to vacation with Disney. If you want a voice in what topics we consider next, send us an email, beckyg@touringplans.com, send me a message on Instagram @raisingminimes, or comment below and tell us if you prefer Walt Disney World planning, Disneyland planning, or Disney Cruise planning. For now, It's been nice talking with you. We'll see you next week.